Hi, this is my GDQ submission video for Anodyne any percent glitchless. Just before I jump straight into the run itself, I'd like to talk a little bit about Anodyne as a game and its previous showcase at GDQ. So Anodyne is a 2D, sort of somewhat minimal Zelda-like game. It's inspired quite heavily by Link's Awakening. It's also inspired by Yume Nikki in that it's quite uneasy and surreal and creepy. As far as speedrunning it goes, Anodyne any percent with glitches was showcased at SGDQ 2014 by Shadow Draft. That run took under 10 minutes. This run takes just a bit over an hour, optimally about an hour and 5. This particular run is in 1 hour, 7 minutes, and 7 seconds. I was fairly new to the category at the time, but I was not new to the game. I've had quite a lot of experience with Anodyne, and I'm confident that I'd be able to put in a showing with this. In any case, let's get into the run. Right. So it starts off with a simple tutorial. It tells you how to move around. The text is in Japanese because fewer characters means it's faster to scroll through. It teaches you how to interact with objects with these little monitors, and teaches you how to open the menu, and then you walk through into this area, which is called the Nexus. Here you talk to the village elder named Sage, and he tells you about the darkness and the briar, and then we just launched straight into the first dungeon-like area. What I did there, I called it an entrance warp. The entrance room of a dungeon is sometimes not set exactly to where you spawn in, and Anodyne has the ability to return to entrance. So I did that the first time to move a few screens up without actually walking. I did it a second time to avoid killing the enemies after picking up our weapon, which is a broom. And I'm going to do it a third time just to move back here after picking up the key. And once that's done, this little introduction area, we go through into the first main outdoorsy area of the game and introduce ourselves to Mitra, who is a bit like a sidekick character. I walk to the right before I meet Mitra, and then I walk off screen within 3 footsteps, and that allows me to skip another line of dialogue that Mitra says, and then a little cutscene of her riding away on the bike. We're now in the first dungeon after a little bit of exposition with Sage. This is the temple, or more fully the Temple of the Seeing One. It has these, I'm not sure what you call them, they shoot laser bullets, I guess. And it's being the first dungeon of the game, it's not too overly convoluted. We move around and we pick up keys, and we also pick up those which are called cards, and you need 36 of them to beat the game glitchless. So we will be picking up 36 of them as we move along. They're scattered around the overworld and also in the dungeons. You've seen me interact with dust. I can pick up dust using my broom and place it down on another tile. You can use it to block lasers. Later on you'll see me use it as a raft to walk around on water on. Young, the main character, sinks in water if he's not standing on a dust raft. Here there's a little puzzle with the movement of the enemies. We're going up here to get the second card of the dungeon. Here we use our dust to work our way up the laser barrage. And now we enter the first boss room and fight the first boss, who is called the Seer, who's this big creepy mask with laser powers. And the Seer always moves in a fixed pattern, so it's a fairly predictable boss. It's quite simple to know what's going to be done at each stage. And after the boss finishes its death animation, in just a moment, a health pickup comes along in the form of a cicada, and we stand over it, and it refills your health and then floats up to the top of the screen to give you an extra bit. And once we can move again, we continue our way on. At the end of each dungeon, there's another card you can pick up with the boss on it, and there's also, for the first 3 dungeons out of 6, there are these keys, and getting these keys is essential to being able to access the later 3 dungeons of the game. I move one screen to the right to unlock that portal back to the Nexus, which is our hub world, and then I can walk to the entrance of the dungeon and head back out. Got a few errands to run before we move to the next area. Got to go and collect another card down here. And once we've done that, we can make our way back up and come down from the woods, open this gate into the next area, which is called the fields. In the fields, before we move on to the next dungeon, there is a bit of stuff we need to do. First, we go and meet this cat whose full name is Miao Zhao Tuan and we take them along over here, conveniently unlocking the portal on this screen as we do so, and take the cat over to this fish called Goldman, who is scared of cats and so runs away, and he's been blocking the path, but now it doesn't matter. We pick up the cardboard box and find this cat. It's been so long since I've played this game in English that I can't remember the name of that cat, but I remember that it's a grumpy cat. Meow can't follow us any further than that, so we continue on and follow the path, and what we find at the end of it is Goldman's house. So after being scared by the cat, he retreated to his own abode. There's a lot of dust in his house, but conveniently there's one hole where we can clean it for him, and Goldman doesn't like us at the moment because he's a bit stubborn, and we also scared him with a cat. But if we clean his house for him, he likes us a little bit more. And he allows us to get the card that's in his house, which is of him. What I did there was the same action as an entrance warp, but when you're in an overworld area, it takes you back to the Nexus instead of to the entrance of the dungeon. And from there I can use it to get back to the centre of the fields area using the portal I unlocked. Thankfully, you only need to walk on a portal's screen to unlock it. So as long as you can sneak a little bit of walking through a portal screen into your route, it's pretty convenient and pretty swift to be able to get one. We're now in the forest, which is one of the overworld areas before our next dungeon. Here you can see me using a dust raft. We've got one card to pick up here. Unfortunately, it's a bit of a roundabout. You have to go all the way down and then come back up around this other place. but it's not too bad. And you also get to meet this foreshadowing ghost of one of the future main characters of this game, someone you'll meet a bit later on. We can take that little shortcut. And now we're in the cliffs. This is personally some of my favourite music in the game, although I think this game in general has a lovely soundtrack. We've got a few things to do here. We're going to follow the path of ladders. And the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to save here to save warp later. Then I'm going to follow along here and pick up a power-up. So we meet Mitra again, and she tells us, hey, I bought some new shoes, you can have these ones, they're jump shoes. And she tells us about jumping. Once we move off onto the next screen, we can save warp back. Save warping always puts you at the last checkpoint you saved at, but it does save your progress, so I still have the jump shoes, as you can see. And now we're going through this little mini dungeon area to get an upgrade for our broom, which is the extend upgrade, which lengthens its range. You can see if you jump off the edge of a tile, you can actually jump two tile wide gaps, excuse me. I don't know if that's intended, but it's very helpful. And once we get that, we save warp back out and end up at the checkpoint again. Death warping used to be faster because you could take fall damage, but fall damage was patched out in a later version of this game, and I am playing on current patch. A lot of casual players found difficulty with the platforming sections, so fall damage was removed to give the platforming sections a bit of an easier time, an easier ride. It doesn't really affect the speedrun too much. Save warping and death warping are interchangeable because you don't have to find ways to go out of your way to lose health. Anyway, we're now on the second dungeon of the run, which is the mountain cave. We took a little detour to pick up a key, and now we're on our way just to progress through the dungeon as normal. This one has a lot of dogs in it. They're a very frustrating enemy to deal with. Their pattern, although you can predict it, it's not always the easiest to predict. So you have to watch out for them, and they can also deal you quite a bit of damage quite quickly. Doing a little careful jumping across these switch tiles. If you put dust on one of those switches and then step on the switch, it will carry you over to the end of its rail. With some careful movement, you can dodge having to use those particular ones. There are also these weird people in the mountain cave. They don't really do anything. They make this chattering noise that you can hear in rooms that they're in, and as well as that, they also slow you down because you have to push them around. Sometimes they can be annoying to deal with because they can stop you progressing as quickly as you want. And of course, I don't think I mentioned them yet, the rollers that drop down from the screens. Those are a common recurring obstacle. Once we've got all the keys we need and everything from here, all the cards and such, we can move on to the second level of the mountain cave. Take out these frogs very quickly. and make our way along. We're just taking this little round trip to grab a card. There you can see the switch tiles. Here's one of the strange things that the people in this cave can do. Sometimes, if you interact with them a bit strangely, they can push you back off a screen you've just transitioned into. Not sure exactly why. One of the unfortunate side effects of them. These rollers would require pretty careful timing without taking damage, but we can just tank through them because there's a nice handy save point here. We jump down this hole, fall through this. I don't know what that is really, but we fall down to the bottom level of the dungeon and we meet the boss, who is called the Wall, with this great grimacing smile and these hands that smash you. And also you can see they start to break the platform you're standing on. The Wall, there is RNG in what it does. There is RNG in where those orbs it spits go exactly. There's RNG in the exact patterns it does with the lasers, or whether it smashes the ground with its hands. There's also a small chance of this boss soft locking and not giving you that dialogue, but thankfully it's not a huge time loss, especially in a marathon context, because you can reload the save that you took right before the boss. Gonna grab another piece of health for our troubles. We meet Sage again at the end of this dungeon and pick up the blue key. And we can quite conveniently just grab that portal, and then if you do a walk back to the Nexus in the Nexus, it puts you in the middle of the Nexus, which is very handy to get back to the fields quickly. We take this little raft ride and we're going to move on to the next set of areas leading to the third dungeon of the run. So first we encounter this this quite lonely, sombre little beach. You see there I've walked onto the screen with the portal on it. That will come in handy. Just got to take a little trip round the beach first, because there is a card over here on this pier, or next to this pier. Once we've got it, we can go straight back to the portal by warping to the Nexus and then jumping in. If you're facing upwards, you can skip the pixelated animation of the Nexus loading in and jump straight into the portal. If you were facing any other direction, you'd have to wait for that animation to finish and then face up and jump into the portal. But if you're already facing up, you're close enough to just jump straight in without that animation being a worry. Nice little time save. This area is called the Red Sea. Unfortunately, we have to push a fisherman into a whirlpool to get to it, but we take a little take a nice little round trip around here to get this chest, and then we can go back into the portal, having walked onto the portal screen, and then we head into the dungeon, the Red Cave. The Red Cave is quite an interesting dungeon. It's split into 4 parts, and all of them have a fairly similar internal structure, but with different puzzles to occupy you inside them. So what often happens in this dungeon is that you'll find yourself going right, then left, then grabbing a key or a card from the central path that you unlock once you have gone through the 2 paths to the side. This is the central area of the dungeon. So I've gone right first and picked up a key. you can see these tentacles. They unlock the second and third areas, and later the fourth areas of the dungeon. Only the first one is available from the start. And also a sort of connected mini dungeon, which lets you get another upgrade for your broom, but we don't need to go there in this. Although that area is not connected to any of the other 4 main dungeon areas. It's a bit like the cave that we went into for the extend upgrade. Now that we've got our card, we can leave the central area and make our way over. I'm saving there so that I can save warp back there later, instead of entrance warping back to the dungeon. And then if I entrance warp back to the dungeon, it would put me in the central area, and then I'd have to leave and walk back to the right again. But by save warping, I don't have to do any of that, and I can just be here at the start of the area to the right. Those enemies with the great big weapons, the blue ones, I think they're scythes. I believe those enemies are called Reapers. Let's see, yeah, they are scythes. They always drop that pickup, which gives you 3 health. It's very convenient, because defeating them quickly can sometimes involve tanking a decent bit of damage from them. Right, in this central path we find another tentacle, and then we can walk back here to the entrance so that we don't have to go all the way from the right to the left. And now we're in the left area. This dungeon involved various lasers and these rocky things. Unfortunately, I didn't move him quite properly and he got on the way of the laser. The rocky, I don't know, the moving rock creatures, whatever you want to call them, help you push buttons and open gates. So there's key 1 for the left area. Sometimes you do have to destroy the rock creatures though, by moving them into the lasers. The lasers are the only things that can hurt them. Take a little trip on a dust raft. Grab another key. And move up to the center. And in the central path lies another tentacle. And now that we've got the tentacles from both the right and left paths, the upper area of the dungeon unlocks, which is a screen above the central area. And within the upper area lies 1 card and the boss. So first we go and get the card over here to the left. Then we can save warp back. It's quickest just to wait for this cycle of lasers to allow it to move. And in current, it's quickest to jump so that you aren't being pushed backwards by the water. There's a quick kill strat for this boss. This boss is called the Rogue. And if you stand up in this specific corner and just stab it repeatedly, you can kill it without it ever entering its second phase. You're just far enough to the right of it where you can hit it, but its second phase never activates. And during its second phase, it moves around the room, which makes killing it quite a bit more difficult and less predictable. But with that, you can save a decent bit of time just very easily. And the second phase also makes waves that knocks you off your dust, so it's not helpful. Now we've got our third key, and that's all we need to get to the windmill, which will unlock the second 3 dungeons of the game. We go through the portal and then head back to the fields. Before we go to the windmill though, we need to pick up some cards that are in the fields. The fields is a very, very expansive area. It's one of the largest in the game, and it has a lot of branching paths and winding little ways to go that lead you to different areas. Now that we can jump, we don't have to worry about those spikes, although you can just walk through them and take damage off them. But we've already got the jump shoes by now. We can use these currents to help us move just a little bit faster. Up this pathway is a slightly more dungeon-like area with a lot of enemies and gates to deal with. We're going through this pathway first because we have to defeat all of the enemies on a screen, and this one is over on this pathway. We saw a similar mechanic in the first dungeon. Don't have to destroy any of the slimes here though, and we pick up a card of Mitra. Now we're on our way to get the second card from this place. Using our raft to move along. There are a lot of currents in this room, so it's best to just keep jumping. Try to take the shortest path without taking damage from the spitter things. Now that we've picked up those 2 cards, we can head off to what the game refers to as the rainy area, but I always call it the windmill due to its big landmark, which is, of course, a windmill. You can see we need the 3 keys to actually enter this area, or to actually go through all of this area. And there is a card in that chest. We will be picking it up, but we have to turn on the windmill first, because it's, before you turn on the windmill, if you try to pick up that card and open that chest, it says some sort of dark energy prevents you from opening it. Here's a little cutscene of the statues moving and letting us get to the late game areas. This will be a good time for donations in an actual marathon run. Since we pass through the place with the portal, we can avoid walking back down the windmill and just grab the card from there. And we're going to move off to the portal we unlocked right back at the end of the first dungeon. There's a puzzle around here. When you can go down and round and reach a puzzle, but you don't have to, because you can jump over 2 tile wide gaps. We can just tank through those slimes, it doesn't really matter. And we can't see at this point, but we can just walk straight down. We open a little gate door with a key that we picked up, and then we head off to the next area. Oh no, of course. Before we head off to the next area, we have to move through the woods, this sort of secret pathway that's near the next area of the game. We encounter bats that can spit fire. There are 3 dogs in here. Thankfully you don't have to defeat any of them. And around at the end of this quite long-winded pathway is a card. Sorry, that's my 100% brain memory kicking in. In 100% you don't have to walk down here, because you get the card quite differently. Once we do have the card, we can move on to the next area, which is one of the darkest of the game. It's called Youngtown. It's this sort of suburban area, and once you get into it and try to talk to an NPC, you find that your broom has turned into a knife, and talking to them actually just kills them. It's not all for naught though, thankfully. I mean, it's a bit sad for them, but if you kill 10 of them, you can access a certain house that's being blocked by an NPC, and in there's a card. So here's the NPC. He just fades away once you've killed 10 people. Walk through the very dark house and around, and a card. And because we walked onto the screen with the portal on it, we don't have to make our way back out of the house. We can just go to the portal and then move on up to the 4th dungeon of the run, which is called the apartment. The apartment features quite a lot of these switch blocks, I guess you could call them, where if you hit them with your broom, you can toggle the cubes on and off even. It also features a lot of these silverfish, which you can move around and get to hit switches for you. There are also those enemies in the hazmats and gas masks. Those are called gas guys. They shoot green gas, and if you walk into the range of that gas, it reverses your movement controls. It's very annoying, so it's typically a good idea to get a gas guy out of your range or destroyed as quickly as possible. Unless you have to, unless you're able to just avoid it like that. They don't move too quickly, which is quite handy. Here there's a little rat, and we've got to get it to hit the switch. And come around and hit the 2nd switch ourselves, and grab a key. The rats always move clockwise, as you can see. But with various obstacles that you can put in their way, you can control exactly where they go and allow them to hit buttons you need them to hit. Here's another example. The rats aren't blocked by the cube collision while the cubes are still forming. Their collision hasn't activated until they are completely formed. Instead of dealing with any of the cubes there, you can just put yourself in a nice position and have one of the rats hit the other switch while you're standing on it. Here we get a silverfish to hit something, and we hit another switch to get the gate. Those enemies, when you try to hit them, they will teleport behind you. And if you're quick enough, when they teleport behind you, you can turn around and get them as they spawn. a lot more of these bumpers. We use the dust to block the rat, and quite conveniently, it also stops the bumper moving. A lot of switch block movement here. You can see that I'm able to cancel the jump animation, no, the attack animation with a jump animation to allow me to move just that bit quicker, because you can't move while you're attacking. During fighting it's not too useful, because there's a lot of positional variance during fighting that can be hard to move through with using the jump cancel, but for general things like those switch blocks, it's quite helpful. We've come up a floor of the apartment. This silverfish turns clockwise, and when it looks at you, it gets scared and runs away. That was a second try puzzle. It's an annoying puzzle because if you haven't got the cubes right, or you get the silverfish to look at you at the wrong time, it will just walk off the edge and you have to reset the room. This boss is called the Watcher. He's a strange, creepy ghost thing who can shoot fire. He has quite a bit of dependence on RNG. The attack patterns are random. And from here on, we're not collecting any more health. We've got all we need. Oh no, wait, I believe we're collecting one more from the next dungeon, actually. Just for safety. That's what we tend to do. Before we head to the next dungeon, we have some cards to pick up through this area of the cliffs you can reach after beating, or after activating the windmill, I should say. We gotta walk over to the portal to the dungeon, because the portal for the cliffs is way back over at the other side of them, so going straight in would not be helpful. The dungeon, on the other hand, is right at the end. The portal. Gotta head across here just to pick up a card with the dog on it. And once we do that, we can move on to the next area of the game, which is one of the more surreal. We call it Space. And Space, while it looks quite mysterious and we're not really sure, it's hard to be sure exactly what's going on here. There's nothing that can hurt you in it. At least not during the speedrun. So we can just walk quite peacefully. These things look like they might hurt you on a first playthrough, but they're happy. They just sort of flock to you. And there's a right path and a left path, and on each of them there's a card. There is also a character on each of them that you can talk to called a Cube King. There are two Cube Kings. They each rule over different domains of space. The sort of lighter one and this darkish one. But we don't need to speak to them. We can just grab their cards and then move on. Using the convenient Nexus warp and jumping into the gate to get back to the center afterwards. We're now entering the 5th dungeon of the run, called the Hotel. That roof area while it counts as part of the hotel dungeon, is not set as the entrance to the dungeon. The entrance to the dungeon is actually set a few screens later. So similarly to what we did in the first area called the street, we can skip a few screens there by entrance warping. Taking a fall there, just to get back to the start of the screen, after picking up some dust to carry a switch. Picking up a key, warping back to the entrance. These 2-tile jumps make things a lot more convenient. Once we come round here, if I don't get hit by the frog and don't keep failing the jump, we can unlock those gates and we can reach the elevator. The hotel is set up in floors, much like a regular hotel, and on those floors are different cards that we can get and different things that we can do to unlock the boss room. First we come around here and get a card. Using a 2-tile jump we can skip the first half of that puzzle. From then on it's just timing. We deal with the gas guy here. Grab this key. We hit that save point. So that later on we can walk back there. Pass one gate to unlock it, or one key door. Try and get through that bumper room really nicely. Although it's a bit difficult because they are a pain in there. And then up here there's a key, and we can save warp back to the checkpoint. And from there we can go through the door we walked past. These enemies are called dust maids. They activate and start chasing you and have their hitbox turn on when you pick up dust in the room. Thankfully they move quite slowly, so they're not really an issue. Give a few more people in the hotel, and now we take the stairs down to another floor. Grab a checkpoint, come back up. A little jumping puzzle here. We're going down this pathway, making that jump. We're going to get a key from here, and then we will save warp back, as we have done before, to that checkpoint that I grabbed on the lower floor. Using this dust, carrying it across screens. Dust carries across screens when you're walking on it, but if you're holding it in your broom, it does not carry across screens. It will reset when you transition across a screen, and you will no longer have it. Now that we're down here, we can skip putting the dust in the way of these smoke pipes by making a jump. Even if we don't make the second jump, which is for some reason harder than the first one. We're just back at the start of the room. We see the creepy eye. We make our way along. There are two things to do here to unlock the boss room. The first thing to do for the first set of gates is to kill that slime. And once the enemy in that room is defeated, the first set unlocks. Then we go around another pathway, and you could see on the other side of the room there is a button which we can press, and that unlocks the second set of gates. That pink flower that I walked through there, for some reason, if you're right up against that wall, it doesn't register its hitbox with you. That's fine. So, just a nice little way of avoiding any trouble from it. And with that, we move on to the boss. The boss is called the Manager. It's a creepy eye thing. It shoots these dust clouds that hurt you. It moves in a fairly predictable pattern, and also at the end of its first phase drops 3 health points, which helps you quite a lot to fill up. In its second phase, it moves right. It drops these other red things and also those beige ones that slow you down. You can just stand in the corner and attack it as it moves back. We grab some health here. Just a bit quicker because it, instead of grabbing the health from the Watcher, where there's a lot of health to tick up quite a lot of the time, usually you have quite high health at the end of that boss fight. So waiting for the health to tick up takes a shorter amount of time. We go back to the entrance and then go down to the portal. And from here we can head on to the last dungeon of the run. But before that, we come back to the end of the red cave and then enter this strange portal door into what we call the 8-bit labyrinth. The 8-bit labyrinth, it's relatively straightforward. There are various paths through it, of course. It's maze-like, and at one point in it there is a dungeon, but at another point for it there is a card. So first we go to the dungeon so that we can unlock its portal, and after that we grab a card, and then we can walk back to the dungeon. So this is a fairly good time for donations in a marathon setting. That's us just stepping into the dungeon to unlock its portal. The second set of 3 dungeons, the portal is at the start of them, and in that one it's on the very first screen. So it's very convenient. We're going to tank some damage through these enemies. They're called chasers. They deal 6 points of damage, one of only 2 things in the game to do so. And they move faster when you use your broom on the same screen as them, which helps you move through their pathways, unless they're just right in your way, and it's better to tank through them. So we grab the card and then we can head straight back across to the final dungeon of the run, called the Circus. This is one of the more elaborate dungeons of the game, and it's pretty tough. There's a lot going on in it. There are all these rollers around, various different types of enemy, the cube switches are back. The fire bats are back as well. And there are slimes in here that can actually shoot little projectiles at you. And they're more of a nuisance than anything, but health management is quite important in this dungeon, so getting hit by them, although frustrating and although you can deal with it, is not great. So we do try to avoid them. Another little rat puzzle here with the cubes. Instead of following all the way around this room, we can just jump from switch to switch, grab the key and then head on out. Up here there's some more pathways to take through. And using clever jumping we can skip trying to do anything with the cubes in that room and just jump the gap. These are the acrobats. They are a pain. They move always in diagonals, but in random diagonals, and then when you hit it 3 times they split into 3 and the individual acrobats start crawling around randomly, and then you have to deal with them as well. Gotta be quite careful with them not to get hit. There are quite a lot of enemies in this dungeon that can deal far too much damage to you if you're not careful. And also, of course, the fire spitting pads on the floor. You can tank through a decent number of them though. Here we meet one of the so-called servants, and although they look like they need some help, they are actually the boss of the dungeon. So first we put some dust down to rescue that one. I believe their names are Arthur and Javiera. That was Arthur we just rescued, I think. Then we continue on the next path. We find out that there are lions here. They take 4 hits. They attack quite randomly. They can leap. They can spit fire. Not the easiest to deal with. If you stand in this particular corner and get there quickly enough, the dogs will not run round and hit you most of the time, which is very, very useful because it is very easy to lose all your health in that room. Here I got a strange graphical glitch which separated my collision and sprite of Young from the actual sprite of the broom. Somehow I managed to play through it, and it just reset once I got back onto the screen. I'm not sure what happened. It didn't affect my gameplay, so it was fine for any percent glitchless. It doesn't happen very often. I think I've only seen it twice. We save here because we're coming back here later. But before we do that, we've got some rollers to jump over and fire to walk through. We grab a card from there, and then we can make our way over this way. Dust actually blocks the fire pads, you can just run right over them if you've got dust. So we saved Javiera, the second servant. This dungeon on the rocks, it's littered with references to the Seeing One, who you remember is who the temple is dedicated to in the first dungeon. So that's, I suppose, why they're servants. They're servants of the Seeing One. We deal with this lion. We've got to be careful in this room as well. The acrobats are a good showcase of why trying to jump cancel your movements isn't always helpful, because if you jump cancel and move the wrong way, you just end up running into something. And that is not good. Got enough health to tank through there. We meet some of these more speed pads, and we've got to use them for jumping puzzles. Hit some switches. These are difficult rooms to do. They can be tough to predict, and you can lose your health quite quickly if you're not careful. Here I come into this room with the two sets of acrobats with only 2 health, which is not really an ideal scenario, and I also lose one, but I do make it through, thankfully. You can see how random their movements are. Once we're there, we can get a card of the lion and make our way back and head round this little side path. Thankfully there are some speed pads to help us along. Grab this for the health, it's pretty important for the next fight. And now we meet the servants. They team up together and run around anti-clockwise, and Arthur throws... Or is it Javiera who throws Arthur? Or do they take it in turns? No, Javiera throws Arthur. I don't normally pay attention to that, but as you can see, they move around in circles. They throw at you. What I did there was a sort of pattern manipulation. I stood in certain spaces and attacked at certain times, and managed to get them to move in a way that allowed me to just pack damage into them quickly. Unfortunately, we see their grisly fate after they are defeated. Once we're done with that, we can leave via an entrance warp and then go through the Nexus portal and head along through the fields to the endgame areas of the game. This area is called Terminal. I stay close to the edge here to avoid speaking to Sage before I need to. Before we speak to Sage, we want to go up to the right path and grab a card that's at the end of the broken bridge. Then we can speak to Sage, who attempts to stop us from going, but he can't fool us. Really, we've got all 36 cards, even if the gate says 92. And then Sage tries to fight us. He doesn't think we're ready, so he becomes a boss battle. Sage's boss battle takes a decent bit of practice. You have to be quite prepared to know where to stand at each point and know how to deal with each of his attacks. And it takes quite a lot of health out of you. So I stand in a certain space. His movements are always the same. This is his final phase. He rains fire down on you. Once you defeat him, he moves back and unlocks the final area of the game. Here we pick up an item called the swap, which allows us to rearrange tiles on certain screens of the map. It's very useful in 100% because once you beat the game, you can unlock it in all areas. So 100% can beat the game and then go back round with the swap. But for this, we just use it for that colour puzzle with the blocks, and then we don't need it again. The final area is called Go, and it has two sub-areas called Blue and Happy. Or Red, if you want. Blue features the snowmen who just talked to you, and also largely mechanical puzzles. Various rollers to deal with, fire pads. And of course, some more speed pads. Falling down the hole always puts you back at the start of a room, which is very, very handy. Things like that. Also for things like that. Pressing some buttons and then immediately being able to get back to the middle to press the next set. Some more jumping. Some careful jumping puzzles here with the smoke pipes. That's a bit of an RNG fest, that. You just gotta hope that the flowers don't hit you with their spores or whatever they are. And here, you can just tank through those laser blasters instead of trying to block them with any dust. There are 3 buttons. You wouldn't be able to press them, but Mitra comes along on her bike and comes to the rescue. And then we see this strange ghostly figure again. That's one of the areas completed. There's a little cutscene here. Sage attempts to stop you and has a bit of a go at Mitra. But we prove ourselves a loyal friend by taking Sage's incredibly slow-moving bullet that does no damage. We can just walk right into it as soon as it appears, and then once its hitbox becomes active, we just instantly take the damage and progress the cutscene. So this area is called Happy. There are these people walking around. But once we reach a certain point in it, it begins to shake. And it lights on fire. And Happy, from this point on, becomes a gauntlet area of a very large number of enemies that you have to be very careful when fighting in order to not just lose all your health and die. It is not an easy stage of the run, especially so late into it. It pits you up against some of the hardest enemies to deal with in the entire game. At quite a few places it pits you up against the acrobats, the lions, the dogs, and there are some gas guys as well. Having your controls reversed here is a nightmarish situation. So here, of course, I take out the gas guys as quickly as possible. because it's simply not worth the risk of them reversing your controls and having you walk into spikes and just keep getting hit and die, because it can be very difficult to tell when your controls are the right way round and when they are reversed. The boundary of the gas that the gas guys shoot is not always clear. Here's some more dogs to defeat. Have to get one of the dogs and have to get both of the dogs and only one of the flowers for some reason. Here you can do something quite interesting with the Reapers. You don't actually need to defeat all of them, because seemingly they just walk into the hole and die of their own accord. So the first one, you could see when I first entered the room, did it immediately, but then the second one does it after a bit too. At the end of this area, you hit another switch, activate this lava river, and from here on only the final boss remains. And it's this figure. This is Briar, and instead of saving him from the darkness, he becomes this strange plant demon monster thing. There are a lot of bullets in this fight to dodge, but there's this safe spot which lets you deal with them quite simply. There are also these spikes that move along, but if you're standing in the right position vertically, you can have them be the tile above you without them actually getting in your way, and you can just stay still during that bit. Briar has 6 phases optimally, and you can see the bullets increase, the speed of the spikes also increases. So there is cold and hot, effectively. There's fire and ice, and you have to play a Legend of Zelda-like game of batting the ball back and forth with the ice. And the fire phases give you these flame shooting things, and when the little sparks hit some dust, sparks fly out in all directions, and then you can hit the flowers at each end of Briar at the end of the phase. Once Briar is defeated, we head to the end of the game. You very nearly sink, but Briar turns out not to be too bad after all, and he teaches you to swim and says, "Let's go out for sandwiches." And Sage says, "You did adequately," and that's time. So yeah, time there, just to make it clear, is when you hit the top edge of the screen and start fading away. And you lose control. So that's Anodyne any percent glitchless. Although, of course, there aren't huge game-breaking things to show, but there are a lot of small optimizations that go into this, and I still think it's an exciting category. Anodyne is Anodyne's an excellent game. It's and it's a good speed game as well. I don't really want to labour over it too much, but it's got a lot to show, and there is a lot of little bits and pieces that go into a run of it. You'll note the weird aspect ratio, that's 8:9. I thought I'd better mention it. I'm not sure exactly how you deal with it on stream, but it is 8:9, so that's something to bear in mind, I suppose. But in any case, thank you so much for considering Anodyne any percent glitchless for GDQ, and I hope you enjoyed watching this, and I appreciate it that you did, and I appreciate your consideration of the game as well. Thanks, bye.